Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan, and my research report topic is unavoidable action, the psychological motivation behind social conformity. But before I start it, I want to ask everyone a question, that is, what elements will make you alter your decision? In my opinion, which is public opinion and social norms, which will result into social conformity. And this is my table of contents. I have divided my report into three parts: the introduction, body, and conclusion. In the introduction, I will introduce the terms definition, purpose of research, and the thesis statement. And in the body, I will talk about the normative conformity, informational conformity, and the social conformity is not simply restricted in physical form. And last, I will talk about culture and conformity. Then its conclusion. So in the introduction, so what is conformity? According to Dr. Saul McLeod, conformity is a type of social influence involving a change in belief or behavior in order to fit in with a group. And there are two kinds of conformity, which is normative conformity and informational conformity. Normative conformity is produced by the need of individuals to be accepted and judged positively by a group. As to the informational conformity is when one person accepts information transmitted by somebody else as true, which is informational conformity. And this research report will focus on these two types of conformity in order to understand the psychological motivation behind each conformity action and the relationship between culture and the herding behavior. And here is my thesis statement. My thesis statement is informational conformity is much more harmful than normative conformity because people who fall into normative conformity have the ability to distinguish right from wrong, and conversely, people who fall into informational conformity cannot tell right from wrong. So to start with normative conformity, and I want to take one of the most common example, rating. Theoretically, rating is based on our feelings to giving the opinion, right? But what if our rating is actually deeply affected by previous rating and induces us to give a rating that is completely distinct from our actual opinion? In Do I Follow My Friends or the Crowd, informational cassettes in online movie ratings, they design an experiment that they use a social movie site which have 20 million users and every day have hundreds of reviews on it. And they want to observe the relationship between each rating and in order to observe how social influence impacts on each rating. And here's their findings. In well-acclaimed movies, people incline to follow the crowd, even encounter their actual opinion. And when it comes to unpopular movies, people incline to decrease their original rating. By doing so, people expect to make fewer errors, devote lower mental effort, and prevent the loss of their reputation. And when it comes to unpopular movie, people will feel less pressure and allow them to express their authentic opinion when they are rating. And when previous rating is come from friends, people will follow their friends no matter the evolution from the crowd is high or low. So the conclusion is, whether prior ratings come from friends or crowds, they both make people alter their ratings in order to match with the majority opinion. And another experiment relating to the normative conformity is in how social influence can undermine the wisdom of crowd effect. They designed an experiment that they asked participants to do 6 estimation tests. And they divided into 2 groups. One is aggregated information, which will give the participant the average of all participant estimation. and the participant can decide to alter the answer or not. And another group is that they don't give them any information. And the result is, compared with no information circumstances, the variety of estimation in aggregated information substantially decreased due to the social pressure. However, fewer estimation did not help to decrease the error of the estimation, and even have the opposite effect that make the estimation more inaccurate. So here's the conclusion, that according to Jan Lawrence, ETAL, if all predictions are narrowly distributed around a round value, a decision maker will gain confidence in the advice that is actually misleading. Thus, social influence profoundly affect people's judgment. As to the informational conformity, in the sound of others, surprising evidence of conformist behavior, they design an experiment that they will ask participants to take a test, and while the participants are confused and do not know the answer, they will make meaningless sound in order to observe how people react when they hear the sound. And here's their findings. When people doubt their answer, people tend to have a conforming action to that meaningless sound by intuition, even though that sound did not have any meaning. So the conclusion is, which demonstrate that even in an arduous situation, participants cannot interact with others and do not understand any signals. People still have an instinct to conform with that ambiguity sign. And another experiment relating to the informational conformity is, in an informational influence perspective on conformity, perceived knowledgeability increased expression of minority opinions. They designed an experiment that asks participants to express their views on several disputed issues in America in order to observe three aspects, which is perceived knowledgeability, certainty, and the time they take to express their opinion. And here's their findings. When participants are both in low perceived knowledgeability and attitude certainty, majority are more willing to share their ideas than people deem themselves as a minority. And they also designed another experiment in the same essay that asked participants to choose partners to have a discussion and observe what kind of partners will people choose with the same or counter opinion. And here's their findings. When participants both in low perceived knowledgeability, majority are more willing to pick a partner who has a counter opinion compared to the people who reckon themselves as the minority. So the conclusion is, through these experiments, we can find that people tend to keep themselves in a low profile, do their utmost to avoid interacting with others, and observing the majority opinion in order to meet that majority view when being deficient in knowledge. Those through these experiments have proven my thesis that conformity is much more harmful than normative conformity. In the sound experiment and the knowledgeability experiment, all participants blindly follow the majority, which puts them in a tight spot. If the experiment situation happens in reality with other forms, they easily got deceived, which may cause unbearable consequences. In contrast, in the rating experiment and the estimation experiment, participants are both equipped with independent thinking ability, and they simply are surrendered to the pressure of the majority. Therefore, compared with the normative conformity, informational conformity are more toxic. And third, I want to discuss that is social conformity simply restricting physical form that only restricting the face-to-face condition. In impacts of authority and anonymity on social conformity in online chats about climate change, they divide They designed an experiment that is mostly alike to previous experiment, but the difference is they are holding it in online form. And in the first round, they were asked participants to independently answer that do they think there has climate change. And in the second round, participants will discuss these issues with some climate experts, professors, and all these experts will deliberately stand on the opposite of the participant. And the third round, they will ask participants again about the answer. And here's their findings that after discussing with experts, there is an obvious herding behavior. And when faced with pressure from the group, some subjects decided to be a little more discreet, and authorities are the key element to persuade them to conform. So the conclusion is there is not much difference between a face-to-face condition and an online condition in social conformity. Lastly, I want to talk about the culture and conformity. In the cultural adaptation to environmental variability, an evolutionary account of East and West differences, the design experiment that they will observe whether people will pick a unique pen from a group of pen or not, and how much time they use to reach a mutual consensus with the majority. And here's their findings. They found that Americans tend to choose a unique pen from a set of pens, and Asians tend to prevent using the unique pen. And in second experiment, Singaporeans spend less time to reach a consensus with the majority compared with the Americans. And here's the reason. According to Boyd and Richardson, there is a conformist model in society, which is the model that can be accepted by the majority of people. And people tend to follow this model in their daily life. Hence, there is different behavior between East and West. It's because they have the different conformist model in their society, which make them react distinctly. So the conclusion is in different cultures, educations, and growth environments are highly related to whether people follow the crowd or not. So here's the conclusion. Conformity appears in our society in myriad forms, which is the survival instinct as a human being. However, conformity is also a double-edged sword. It could be the wisdom of the crowd, but it could also be a toxic to every people that misleading and manipulated others. Worst of all, people even do not aware of it. Thus, it is crucially important for everyone to cultivate the ability to tell right from wrong and have their self-awareness. Next time, before we conform to others, we should think twice in order to prevent ourselves from having this kind of sugar-coated poison. And here's my works cited pages. Thank you very much.